after 4 years as the director of prospect development at Western Carolina University. And she was a shop of one. So she was doing a little bit of everything in prospect development, analytics, database work. And she was previously the director of prospect development and analytics for the UNC system office, where she built a shared service program to support the universities that did not have their own prospect research programs. If we can get everybody to mute. Yep, thank you. And that was such a resource to the UNC system because as a graduate of UNC Asheville myself, I know that they don't have the same resources there as UNC Chapel Hill or NC State University. So that was very important work. And she holds an MLIS from UNC Greensboro and a BA from the University of Richmond. So we are really excited, Rachel, for your presentation today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. You talked me up a lot there. I'm really glad to be here with you guys today. It's funny because even though obviously I know what month this is, and it is the first month of the year, I somehow hadn't quite connected until Tiffany said it, that this is the first program of the year for you all. So there's a little additional pressure for me. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. Welcome to Prospect Identification and Research. And as Tiffany said, I currently work for Cornell University, but I work remotely for Cornell. I still live and work in the mountains of Western North Carolina, so I'm still local to everybody. And I'll be plugging Upper Carolinas an awful lot, but I am the president-elect of Upper Carolinas, which is the local regional chapter covering North and South Carolina of APRA, which is the professional organization for prospect researchers. Very affordable, and we have lots of great resources. So consider that your first plug for the organization. So to get started, what is prospect research? So I'm really not generally a fan of when people just read you their slides, but I'm going to read you this definition of prospect research, which comes directly from donor search. Prospect research is a technique used by nonprofit organizations to learn more about potential or existing donors' personal backgrounds, giving histories, wealth indicators, and philanthropic motivations to evaluate a prospect's ability to give, which is called capacity, and their warmth or affinity towards an organization. So basically, prospect research is the digging and the analysis to put better information into the hands of fundraisers so that fundraisers can be more efficient at their jobs, which is asking for money. Now, I say that knowing that probably a lot of folks on this call do not have their own prospect researcher and are going to be acting in both roles. So this is about you being better able to provide yourself with good information to be better at fundraising. I have a few goofy memes I have scattered through this. So please enjoy my first one, which is pretty much the life of a prospect researcher, or honestly, any nonprofit shop, which is you are always looking for more prospects. So where do you actually find new prospects? So sorry, could I ask everybody on to mute, please? I'm hearing a little crosstalk. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so where do you find prospects? This, again, goofy little meme. A lot of times in the fundraising world, you can run into somebody just hearing about somebody who has a lot of money and thinking, we're going to go after them and get some money out of them. That's not really always how it works. That's where the affinity part comes in. It's great to have wealthy people, but you need for them to actually have a connection to your organization's mission. So the best place to start with that is that database you already have. Whatever database you have that you are using to keep track of the gifts you've been given and by whom, mining out what you already have is a great start. because if you have somebody who has already made you a gift, you know that they have some kind of affinity to your organization. Another place you could look for potential donors, news articles, your local news. Look in your local newspaper. You can look at the business journal for either your specific area. I don't believe we have a business journal that covers the Western North Carolina region, but there is the whole North Carolina region and individual business journals in different metro areas. The Book of Lists is something that is put out by the business journal. It's an annual thing, a special insert that lists things like the top employers and the biggest companies and things like that in that area. And Business North Carolina would be another great resource. Referrals from members of your board. Peer referrals are a great resource. Just talk to your board members and say, who do you know that might be a good possible donor for us? And that kind of outreach and that kind of networking is invaluable. If you are an organization that has events, any kind of events, or anything else that people would buy tickets to go to or visit or anything like that, that's also a really good indication of people who have affinity to your organization, and another place you could be looking to raise some money. If you have similar organizations, not competitors exactly, but other places that are similar in mission or similar in geography to you, you can look to see who the corporate sponsors of those organizations are. Not only for potentially getting corporate gifts, which I will talk more about that in a little bit, but also the executives at that corporation may have a personal interest in that. Oh, I just completely lost the word. Cause. Wow. I couldn't come up with a 5-letter word, guys. I need more coffee. Anyway, the executives of that organization may have an interest in the cause, and that may be what is driving their corporate sponsorship. On a similar note, same thing, people who give to similar organizations. A lot of organizations publish their donor rolls saying, thank you to these people who gave us a gift this year. Also a really good place to look to see people who may have an interest in that cause. Keep seeing similar organizations coming up here. This is all this affinity piece, trying to identify people who have an interest in what you do. So if they're board members on an organization, either again in the geography or if a similar cause to yours, another place to say, okay, this person is clearly interested in this. And your volunteers. They're already giving you, you've probably heard the time, talent, and treasure, the 3 T's of a nonprofit support. So if people are already giving you their time and their talent, try to get that treasure from them. I hate putting it that way. I mentioned a quick note on corporate and foundation research. Corporate foundation research is a specialty all its own. I am not personally a CFR specialist. I can give you kind of top level ideas about this. Most of the really good resources on looking for corporate and foundation gifts are paid, and I'm trying to focus on just free resources here, but here are some free ideas. Again, coming back to this, look to other organizations like yours to see who has given them gifts or grants. You can look at 990s for big foundations. And 990 is the IRS form that foundations, both private foundations and regular 501c3s, have to file with the IRS every year. Your organization has to file these, so do the organizations that make big grants. So you can look at their annual 990s to see where their money is going. Right now, I really like ProPublica's 990 Explorer for this. But since it is public information and publicly available from the IRS, there's a lot of other places you can get that information. Quick note here is that the IRS is currently super backlogged in processing 990s. So that information is always lags a little bit behind, but it's even more so than usual right now. I think the latest one I've seen lately is organizations whose fiscal year ended in October 2020. So stuff is super out of date. But it's still, you can still at least see where they have historically given money. Candid Professional, which is what GuideStar, there used to be GuideStar and Foundation Directory. Now they're merged together and they're called Candid. It is a paid resource. However, it is available at many local and university libraries. You will hear me coming back to that a lot. Libraries are an amazing resource for databases and other things you can use for research that you would otherwise have to pay for it yourself. Do not overlook your local libraries. You can always explore the websites of your local community foundations and grant-making institutions. They will often have a list of grants made. And for the community foundations, I'm not going to talk about donor-advised funds except for right now. A lot of people have donor advised funds through these local community foundations, and many times you will be able to see the sort of things that people are directing these funds to support through the community foundations. Also press releases from CSR, which stands for Corporate Social Responsibility. That is a common thing for a lot of big companies to have these days, to be able to demonstrate that they do more than just make money, that they're putting money out into their local community. So the CSR section of a company website will have information about, oh, well, we just gave $500,000 to this beautification project, or we gave $100,000 to this community organization, something like that. Google. Again, this is something you will hear me say over and over again. Just looking for things, searching for things is often going to be your best bet. So I'm going to briefly pause here because I realized I loaded a file into the chat and then didn't send it. So I have a template of a sample research profile, what a prospect research profile might look like, that I am going to use to walk you through how you find all the different pieces of information that go into a profile. So I am putting that file up into the chat right now. You should be able to download that out of the Zoom chat. And you can just use that to refer to as I walk you through the different parts of a profile. There is no industry standard for how you would format this. It really depends upon your organization and who is receiving the information. In my very first prospect research job, which was at Wake Forest University, our format was dictated by the university president and his wife. So not even the development office, but all the way up. And they really prefer to have very prose heavy write-ups. So our briefs were very just paragraphs and paragraphs of text. It's much more common to prefer easier to digest bullet points. But again, it's really going to be up to whatever works best for you and the people in your organization. If you look around online, there's no end of potential templates you can use for this. I'm sharing with you a format I've used before, but be aware that this is a guide and not a rule. So do whatever you need to do to make it work for you. So we'll start with the most basic information about someone, just as their name, their contact information. Where do you find contact information? This is something prospect researchers get asked a lot. If you don't already have it because they are in your donor database and they provided you this information themselves, well, the best you've got is to go look at some online resources. So there's whitepages.com. I'm kind of using this to represent any one of a number of these different websites that say, pay us $20 and we'll give you all of somebody's contact information. Almost any free site, and even the paid ones, honestly, are going to be prone to out of date and unreliable information because people change their cell phone numbers, people change their email addresses, people leave jobs. Even if you find something that was true yesterday, it may no longer be true today. So there are a lot of these. Some are better than others. If you ever want to see if any of these contact information sites are any good, the best thing you can do is try it out on yourself or a family member and see what information comes back. And if you think, wow, this found out a lot about me, great, go for it, try it, use it. Just know that there is no 100% reliable source for contact information, no matter what the vendors will tell you. Where I like to go is either company websites or social media. So if you know that the person you're looking at works at this law firm or this paper mill, very relevant to the Waynesville and Canton area here, or something like that, company websites are, if they have the contact information, which not everybody does, but a lot of times there's either a company directory or a who meet our team site that will show you pictures of everybody and then here's their email address. That's reliable information that is coming directly from the company that they work for. That's great. I would use that over something I find on whitepages.com any day. Same with social media. Depending upon which type of social media you're looking at, people sometimes share, this is my personal website, this is my email address, something like that. You can also, if you have the money, you could pay for the LinkedIn premium that lets you message people directly. I know a lot of people who have much better luck with LinkedIn than email, assuming that whoever you're talking to is actually active on LinkedIn, which is not always a great assumption. Again, Google, Google, Google. I could give you specific websites all day long, but the nature of the internet is that sites die and sites rise all the time. So I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but there are some places where I will just do a Google search every single time rather than bookmark a site and then find out that it's gone within a few weeks. So the next step in that research profile you're looking at. So I'm in higher education, which means for me that someone's education history is very important. Another reason that someone's education history might be very important is if you are looking for those ways to connect to somebody. So maybe you've identified somebody who might be a great donor for you, but you don't know how to reach them. If you can find their education history, you may be lucky enough to have a board member or a staff member or another really good donor who went to the same school. And that is some kind of a connection you could potentially use to get in with that person. Where do you find education? Again, social media. I go to LinkedIn a huge amount of the time. Company websites, again, if there is a bio listed for somebody on a company website, it will often say they earned their JD from X and their bachelor's from Y. Specialty websites, by which I mean sites that are specifically about one type of work. So Martindale for attorneys, the North Carolina Medical Board for physicians, that sort of thing. Often this will list where the degree that is pertinent to that role came from. Again, the Business Journal, local newspaper profiles, news articles, board biographies, all those sort of things will often say, he has this degree from X and this degree from Y. And our old friend Google, it'll be on every slide. After you have looked for education, you might want to know about their family. Again, this is both a good information to have, just knowledge. It's another, oh, well, if their child went to NC State, maybe your child went to NC State and you've got that connection. But another important part here is that it can be really good to know if somebody has children, but also their ages, so you can have some idea of what kind of schooling they might be paying for, because that can affect whether they are ready to make some kind of a gift, or if you need to wait for the kids to leave the nest. And also, if they happen to be from a wealthy family, if you can identify that there is family wealth, that's also an indicator of greater capacity. So there's lots of reasons you might want this information. Where do you find it? Social media, best place for this, but big but, do not friend somebody on social media just so you can scope out a private profile. It is unethical. It's creepy. Just don't do it. What you will find, especially with Facebook, is a lot of people still haven't learned to lock down their profiles. So you would be really surprised how much information is still public on a lot of people's social media profiles. Also, if you have somebody who is a friend of a friend, sometimes that will let you see more information. But if their profile is private, that door is closed to you. It's okay. There's lots of genealogy sites. So I've listed a couple here. FamilySearch.org is free, but you do have to create an account for it. Ancestry.com, not free, but very often genealogical resources will be available through your local library, certainly, because a lot of people use their local libraries to research the family trees. So that's a very popular thing to have available at a public library. Again, business journal, newspaper articles, that sort of thing. A lot of times will say she is married to so-and-so and they have these children. Google, again, what you're specifically looking for is marriage announcements, birth announcements, and obituaries. All kinds of things that tend to say, here is the family, here is the family tree. I often am able to confirm family relationships by finding any one of these things. After family information, the next chunk on that template is their job history, or not even history necessarily, but just where do they work right now? Where can you find that? Social media, again, LinkedIn, Twitter bios, if they are active on Twitter for something pertaining to their job. Facebook, less common these days for business. In my experience, most business social media stuff will appear on LinkedIn or Twitter. There's the North Carolina Secretary of State. And actually, since this is for a North Carolina group, I specifically say North Carolina Secretary of State, but every state has a Secretary of State department, and they have a database. All of them are available. Some of them are behind a login. I think I discovered, I'm not going to be able to remember which one, but some state has put theirs behind a paywall, which I find very insulting because it is public information. But where you can, at least in the North Carolina Secretary of State, this isn't true with everybody, you can search the business registrations by agent name, meaning they are registered as the contact for the business, as the owner of the business, as a manager of a business. There's different types of agent, at least in North Carolina. So if you wanted to see, is my person connected with a business that is registered in North Carolina, you can use the North Carolina Secretary of State business search, corporation search, rather. It's called specifically corporation search, to look that up. Now, not everybody is actually going to have their own name on a business. There's a lot of people who will register the business through their lawyer or through a shell company, and then you have many layers of companies. But if it's a small business, most of the time it is registered to that person's name. referenceusa.com and similar things like this that are business directories. Again, that is something you can often find through your library. Newspaper and magazine articles, again. For attorneys, Martindale and Find Law and avo.com is one I didn't put on here, but that exists too, AVVO. If they are an investment advisor, they will have to be registered through the Securities and Exchange Commission, and you can find information about them through the SEC's website. If they are in a profession for which they have to be licensed, which includes doctors, therapists, nurses, attorneys, state licensing boards, you can look them up there and see where they are, who they're affiliated with. And have I mentioned Google? Sometimes the best thing you can do is just put the person's name into Google and see what comes back. Next step, real estate. Oh boy. So when I first started working in prospect research and I was explaining to my parents what I did, and they found out that how easy it was to find out information about what properties somebody owns and how much it's worth and all of that good stuff, they were horrified. And well, it's all public. So if you don't know about this stuff, you're going to find out. Where do you find real estate information? So the county tax assessor. In North Carolina, it is all by county. If you happen to be working on somebody who lives in the Northeast, a lot of those are going to be by town and sometimes even by village. If you get into New Jersey and New York, it gets real small. North Carolina makes it easy. It's all by county. So this is one of those places that I mentioned that I will just Google it every time because local government websites tend to update and change their links all the time. So I don't have bookmarks for this. If I need to look at something in Buncombe County, I will Google Buncombe County Assessor, voila. And you can search those by the name of the owner. You can search it by the address. If you want to go and look right now, wherever you live, if you own a home, you could go and look yourself up on one of these websites and see the information it has. What it will tell you is the name of the owner, the mailing address of the owner, which is usually but not always the actual property itself, and it will give you the information about the last assessed price of the home. In North Carolina, by law, they are supposed to assess a home at 100% of market value. Well, especially with market values being nuts as they have been for the last couple of years, that is not always the case. And depending upon where you're located, the market price and the assessed value may be very different. However, the assessed value is generally a pretty good thing to go by. If you want to, you can use Zillow or Trulia or Redfin, any of those sites that will tell you, hey, here's how much we think your house is worth. And again, especially in the last couple of years, that value, your Zillow estimate is going to be wildly different from what the county has most recently assessed your house at. Again, with the NC Secretary of State, you can look for real estate or investment businesses owned by your prospect that may give you an idea of where to look. Because the thing with the county tax assessor is you can only look up a house if you know it exists. If you're trying to find out where they live, and if you're in Buncombe County and you look somebody up in Buncombe County, you don't see them, you would probably also want to look at some of the surrounding counties. So hop over to the Haywood County GIS and see if they live across the county line or anything else like that. But again, that will only help you if you're looking in your immediate geographic area. If you're trying to find out if they might have homes somewhere else, Google. So if you look up their name and you see, for example, that they're on the board of a nonprofit in Naples, Florida, or you see that they have pictures of themselves on the society page in New York City, then you know, oh, there's another place I can go look for real estate. And the process is pretty much the same, no matter where the home is. You look for the assessor and you look up their name. It's not foolproof, but it works. And when you can find out what the value is of the homes that they own, that can help you get some idea of what kind of wealth that they have. So again, not always foolproof. Sometimes very wealthy people live in very modest homes, and sometimes people are house poor, but a lot of the times this is the only firm indicator of wealth that you have that you can put a number on, and that'll come back into play later. Also, don't forget to search on a spouse's name as well. It's not uncommon for a home to only be in the name of one or the other spouse. So if you don't find it under your direct prospect's name, that doesn't mean that they don't have a home. It just might not be in their name. Okay, salary and stock information. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to blow right through that. Here, income and compensation. So what I will say about this is you are not going to find salary information except in a few very specific circumstances. If they work for a publicly traded company, not just if they work for one, but they have to be what is called a named executive officer. And what that means is different for every company. So in some companies, it might only be 4 people. In other companies, it might be 12. So if they are a chief blank officer in a company, sometimes a senior vice president, sometimes, not always, and it is a publicly traded company, you may be able to find their exact salary information, because that is information that has to be filed publicly with the Securities and Exchange Commission every year. That's part of being a publicly traded company. So if you are lucky enough to be looking at somebody who is in one of these positions, you can get that information. News articles, Yahoo Finance. Honestly, this is the only thing I have used Yahoo for in the last 20 years. I really like the Yahoo Finance website. So that's my preference, but there are so many other websites that do it. Find the one that you like. Or you can look directly at the SEC filings. Edgar is the SEC online database of company filings. But what I actually find easier to do is to go to the company's website. And if they're publicly traded, they will have a section that says investor relations. And go there. It will have all of the SEC filings you could possibly look for. What you want for compensation is the proxy or the form Def 14A. So that's the actual fancy title, but it's just the proxy statement that will have executive compensation in it. Or if you want to look for their stock holdings, they will only have stock holdings publicly reported if they are, again, named executive officer, or if they own 10% or more of a company's stocks. So again, that is the only circumstance in which you can find out what kind of stock holdings somebody has, is if they have to publicly report it to the SEC. So again, if you're lucky enough to have somebody you're looking at who fits that category, what you're looking for is a Form 4, and that is the insider trading form, which simply means it is an insider selling stocks or acquiring stocks. It's not insider trading in the negative connotation sense. Okay. If they are a government employee, you can also find out their actual salary. And in this case, it should be for everybody, not just if they are high up. With the exception of things like, CIA agents and things like that, where their privacy needs to be protected. If they are a state or federal government employee, there are many websites out there that acquire databases of salaries through FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests. So for federal employees, there's Fed's Data Center, there's Federal Pay. Again, if you just plug in something like Federal Employee Salary Database, you will find probably at least 10 others. Major newspapers in a state will often have databases for state employee salaries. So last time I checked, the Observer, the News and Observer, I know has it. Anyway, there's a few different ones that have it in North Carolina. And in North Carolina, I will note UNC system salaries are listed separately from state salaries. So even though the UNC system is a North Carolina state entity, for whatever reason, they're two separate databases. So just keep that in mind. If you're looking at somebody who is a professor at NC State, you will want the UNC salary database as opposed to the North Carolina state employee database. If they're a nonprofit employee, and again, this is going to only come into effect if they are one of the highest paid employees of a nonprofit, you will again be able to find that information on those 990s, where it has to list who are the highest paid people in your organization and how much do they make. So you could try to find the 990s on the nonprofit's website. I generally find that to be pretty difficult. So I just use ProPublica, the 990 search there, and find it that way. Now, I always am asked, what about things like salary.com, glassdoor.com, payscale.com? Better than nothing. If nothing else, it can give you a rough idea of what the range might be for somebody who is a portfolio manager at an investment firm or a teacher or whatever. Might give you a range. I would never take information I find on those sites as gospel. They're self-reported or they're guesses. It can give you a rough idea, but I would never cite it. Another thing I'm often asked is, how much is this private company worth? Oh boy, that is literally an entire industry unto itself, valuing private companies. It's actually what my father just retired from doing, specifically in the medical field. He did that for 40 years. He just retired. It is a highly skilled and very specific profession unto itself. That's if you can confirm that somebody owns a private company in the first place. And even if you know that they own the company, you may not ever be able to determine if they own all of the company, or do they own half of it, or do they own 10%? It's really, 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 really hard. That again, that's a whole thing unto itself. I can't even begin to cover it here. So the easiest thing to say is, if they own a private company, that's a toughie. I have no easy answers. I'm sorry. Something I still struggle with, and I've been doing this for 13 years now. Okay. Not the most important, but a really important thing is to find out, where else are they giving money? So if you're looking to see if they want to give you money, first you need to find out if they're giving anybody money, first of all. So you need to see if they're charitable in the first place. And second of all, this is another good wealth indicator, meaning if you know, in the case that I've screenshotted here and it is in that sample template I provided, if you know that they're routinely giving $500,000 a year, and until that moment, you thought that maybe they could give your organization $50,000 max. Well, now you have a whole new idea of how much to ask for. What I've never been a fundraiser myself, so I'm going to say this from the standpoint of being told this by fundraisers. People, if you only ask somebody who can make $1 million gift for $10,000, you're only going to get the $10,000. They're not this is not, I can't say this is 100% true, but people with high capacity generally won't give at that capacity unless they're asked. So it's better to shoot high. This is what I've been told. Makes me twitchy just on my researcher brain going, but. However, this kind of information can really help you know whether whatever you have in mind as the, okay, this is the ask I'm going to make, if you're in the right ballpark. So where do you find this information? Google or other search engines. What you're looking for is donor rolls published by other nonprofits. You're looking for press releases. You're looking for magazine profiles. I've given a sample of the language you can use for a Google search looking specifically for this. So the name of your prospect, this little asterisk is a wild card. So this is going to find donation, donations, donating, anything that you might, if you think about what you would expect to see in a press release or a news article about somebody making a big gift, that's how you want to structure your Google search. So it would be likely to say Tiffany Armstrong donated $10 million, or her generous contribution, or Tiffany Armstrong, the philanthropist. That's hence these are the different search terms I use there. ProPublica, again, you'll notice I keep coming back to the same sources over and over again because a lot of these have many, many uses. Annual reports filed by foundations with details of grants. So if you happen to find out that your prospect has a private foundation, then you can go look up where that private foundation is giving to. It used to be standard at this point to go to opensecrets.org or other sites, even the FEC's website directly, Federal Election Commission's website directly, to look at political giving as well. Recently, just in the last couple of years, the FEC has released new guidance banning the use of political giving records for any sort of solicitation, which includes nonprofit solicitations. So until such time as the FEC changes that guidance, which they are being lobbied heavily to change that guidance because this is very new, I would not advise using political giving, even though it is another available resource. It's not allowed. It's not ethical. And the same thing goes as with real estate. Don't forget to search by the spouse as well. And here's another meme, just to lighten things up. Okay, just a couple more things here. Professional boards and volunteer information. A lot of the same stuff as you've already heard, business journal profiles, news articles. Oftentimes it will say, so-and-so has volunteered with X for many years. Your board biographies, your business biographies, the About Us page. People love to brag about their volunteerism and what boards they serve on. Again, with LinkedIn or other social media, LinkedIn, again, it all comes back to this bragging about, look at the good stuff I've been doing, read all about it. So people will put it all on their LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever else. ProPublica, you can actually search by a person's name and not just specifically by an organization's name. So you can put in the name of the prospect you're looking at and see if they turn up as a member of any boards. And Google, again, here's some more sample language. The name, the location they're in. You can do board of directors. Sometimes I'll just do board because there's some kinds of boards that aren't boards of directors per se. You could use trustee. There's, again, you're looking for what you would expect to see in the results that you're looking at is what you should be searching for. And this is just the final, everything you've learned. This is even if you're just writing a brief for your executive director or the president of your organization, do all of the lookups first, and then just write your little, okay, here's the highlights, the most important things you need to know. The way I was always taught to think of it is, what if they only have time to glance at it when they're in the cab on their way over to the meeting? What's the most important information they need to have? And the last, not last, but I've saved it until this moment, capacity ratings. People spend their entire careers on just this area of prospect research, kind of like business valuation. That's what capacity ratings are. This is the question of how much can they give? How do you calculate this? This is the question for prospect researchers. And the quick and dirty method, take 5% of all identified assets, meaning the value of their house. If you were able to find salary, you would add that into it. If you were able to find stocks, add that into it. This is the industry standard, like the quickest way to do it. There are so many factors that go into it, but that's its own presentation. You will never know for sure. It is not possible for you or me or anybody to find out how much money is in your pension fund, how much money in stocks do you have, what's in savings, this and that. You will never know for sure. So all you can do is the best you can do. And you can use all of that information I've pointed you to earlier to get an idea of how much do we think they can give. And I should say this 5% of identified assets, in the prospect research industry, the definition of a capacity rating is how much money somebody is able to give to any charitable cause over the next 5 years. So if I say somebody has a capacity of $250,000, that means $50,000 a year over 5 years to any charitable organization. That does not mean that you are going to get $250,000. So that is the job of the fundraiser in conversations with the prospect, is to figure out, okay, if I think they have this much capacity, how much of that are they going to give to me? And that goes back to the affinity part that I talked about at the very beginning. And this is just a reminder for anybody trying to dig up information. Perfect is the enemy of done. Tiffany, I saw you unmute. Do you need to?
No, I'm just here I'm just here when you wrap
Okay.
up. So
I just want to make sure you weren't trying to jump in. Okay.
No.
All right. Very quickly, other tools. Oh, this is clicking out of order. That's fine. Helen Brown Group is one of the big consulting firms that does just prospect research. Helen Brown is amazing, absolute prospect research superstar. This is her list of helpful links. It's just everything you could possibly ever need. Foundation Center, again, Candid, mentioned it earlier, often available through your public library. There's lots of stuff where you could try to find out if your person owns a plane. Go to social media. That will tell you so much about the other stuff they're interested in. There's the $1 million list, which is exactly what it sounds like, a list of people who are millionaires. Google, or DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever your preferred search engine is. Like, I can't even tell you how much of my work is done simply in Google. Last thing, professional associations. If you want to have a more formal education in prospect research, there's APRA International, which is the big overarching Association for Prospect Research. They have their annual conference in the summer. There's a data analytics symposium if you want to get into that. New researcher symposium that takes place during the conference. There's webinars, and Prospect L, I've known it as that for so long. It used to be a listserv. Now it's online forums that is free and available for you to ask questions. Prospect researchers love to help each other out. APRA Carolinas, we are the regional chapter of APRA. We have 2 conferences a year. Spring 2023 will be fully online. We're targeting April for that this year. $35 a year for membership. You will get free access to our history of webinars. So it's a pretty good deal. We do free webinars. There's a road trip grant. Get involved, build your network, prospect research, prospect development. My favorite thing about working in this industry is how willing people are to share their knowledge. That's it. That's me. Please feel free to contact me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I am here to help. I'm happy to help. And I thought this was going to take less time than it did, but I talk a lot. So we have like a handful of moments for questions, if questions is a thing that people do.
That was wonderful, Rachel. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
What a fantastic presentation. And it was perfectly timed. We do want to open it up to questions. If you want to put them in chat, I'll try to monitor that. But otherwise, just take yourself off